Alrighty, in this video we're going to show you guys how to set up custom error handlers in ASP.NET MVC and also how to log your errors. Now, it's very, very, very important that you never display errors publicly to users. That's why when we saw an error earlier when we were deploying to our server, it was automatically configured to hide that information. But that's not a very user-friendly screen, so we want to kind of replace what IIS would give us by default with our own error handlers that can look a whole lot better and customer friendly. So to do that, we first need to go into our routes, and what we're going to do is add in two more routes. We're actually going to expose both our error pages publicly as just normal URLs. Now, it's not like they display anything like that's important, because by definition they don't. But this technique requires that we have two URLs, one for our 404 errors and one for our 500 errors. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go in here and say routes map route error 404 with errors /404 for the URL with a new controller for errors and an action for not found. And then give it namespaces. Then I'm going to copy and paste that and do it for the 500. 500, we'll do that, and then we'll go ahead and just say error. Now at this point, all we have to do is create our errors controller. So I'm going to go into controllers, and I'm going to create an errors controller class. Now, like the rest of our controllers, of course, it's going to inherit from controller. And it's going to have two action results. Not found, or sorry, two actions, which will return a view, and we'll have our error, which will return a view. Now at this point, we'll have to go ahead and create those views. So that's jumping down to views. We're not bothering with view models because we don't have to pass data to or from these pages at all. So I'm going to create a folder called errors, which we're having a slight little issue with it already existing. I'm going to delete that. Nobody saw that.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Nope, I don't even know what I'm talking about. Do I ever know what I'm talking about?
Most of the time, actually.
Okay, so we created our errors folder, and I'm going to go add new view, not found. The title is going to be not found 404. And I'm going to simply say, I'm going to do an h1 404 not found. This page doesn't exist. Why don't you go to the home page? Looks good. Now let's go ahead and create our error page for 500s. You might want to put like customer support information or other things. And bear in mind these layouts or these files will use the layout for our application as well. So they'll look pretty spiffy. Let's go ahead and rebuild and see if we can navigate to them. So I'm going to say errors 404. And let's see if we get a 404 error. Check that out.
Very nice.
If we go to errors 500, we get a 500, but that's an H2. I want that to be an H1. Okay, now that still doesn't actually solve our problem. What we need to do is we need to configure IIS to actually use these pages instead of its default behavior. We do that in the web.config. Now we're going to configurize a bulk of this inside the local only web config for development purposes, although it's not going to matter much because at the end of the day we really do want to see detailed error information locally during development. But it'll make it easier for us to write a config transform that will make the errors show up properly when we deploy to the live server. So I'm going to scroll down to system.webserver, and I'm going to say http errors I'm going to give it an error mode of, whoops, an error mode. Why are you doing this to me? Come on, guy. Error mode of detailed local only with the existing response of pass-through. Then we are going to remove all of IIS's default error handlers. So we're going to remove the 502, the 501, the 500, and the 400, or 404, sorry. 502, 501, 500, 404, and then we're going to add in our own. We're going to say the 502 is going to go to the path errors, error, or sorry, 500. And then it's going to have a response mode of execute URL. Then we're going to do this for the other ones. 501 is going to go to errors 500, 500 is going to go to errors 500, and 404 is going to go to errors 404. So that's the configuration we have to do on the local site. Like I said, it's not going to make a whole lot of difference because if we come back here and try to go to a page that's not found, we basically don't get a whole lot more different things. What I'm going to do is I'm going to throw an exception on our posts controller's index page so that we can see what happens when an error does happen. So I'm going to say throw new exception and error, just to simulate what would happen if we actually had an error on our website. Obviously we know that I wrote this, so there's not going to be any errors unless I put them there. So we do indeed see all the debug information that we would want to see locally. But we now have to make it so that when we deploy this site to production, it'll show the custom error pages. We do that by opening back up our web release config transform, and we open it up and we add a new element into it. The new element is going to be under system.webserver, and it's simply going to say HTTP errors. What we're going to do is we're going to set the error mode to detailed local only like before, and the existing response to replace instead of pass through. The final thing we have to do with this config transform is tell XDT how to transform it, which we're going to say set attributes. This transform will simply update our attributes in our web config to these values, but only for release. Or rather, only when we publish for release. Sound good?
That sounds very good.
Okay, so let's go ahead and build. When we build successfully, let's go ahead and deploy to our server. So I'm going to right-click, hit Publish, start a preview. We get a bunch of cool stuff, like we add in the web config, or add in the error, change our web config, and all that fun stuff. I'm going to hit Publish, and we successfully published. Now remember, I have this exception being thrown on the index of our site. So in theory, if I go to simpleblog.dev, I should see a custom error page.
After it's done thinking.
Yep. And look at that.
Nice.
Now I can still go to the tags and they work because I didn't throw an error on the tags. And if I try to go to an invalid URL that doesn't have a route, we get a 404.
And it's much more pleasant than the thing you'd usually get.
Exactly. But we're not going to go ahead and have our error show up just like this on our page.
What are we going to do?
Well, we are actually going to do that, but I'm going to put a note in to take away all this audio, even what I'm saying right now. 840 custom errors. But we still have a problem. Now the problem is that our errors are being hidden by the server, but they're not being captured anywhere. So we don't know if our site is blowing up or not. Now, again, I wrote it, so we know it's not. But for mortals out there, they're going to have to make sure or check their production logs every now and then to see if their site has had any issues. That makes sense, right?
Absolutely.
The product we're going to use for that is called Elmah. Elmah is a fairly popular, fairly standard error logging utility that we can easily add to our website by right-clicking References, going to Manage NuGet Packages, and typing in Elmah. Then I'm just going to hit Install, and what it's going to do is it's going to install it, but it's also going to configure my web.config to make it work. So how do we use Elmah? Well, first of all, the README will give you some information, but we don't read READMEs. So let's go ahead and jump into the web.config and take a look at what was added. We now have a bunch of Elmah stuff. I'm going to reformat this document because that looks really gross by hitting Control A, Control X, Control V. And now it's a little bit nicer. We now have Elmah. So if I go to my site, I can now access my error log by going to /elmah.axt. Sound good?
Sounds very good. Look at that. Error log.
Yep. Now if I generate an error, couple, we get errors and we get details. And it's awesome.
Alrighty.
There are two problems. One problem I will address in this video. The other problem will be up to you to figure out what the best way to handle it for your situation is. The first problem is that if I were to restart the application, all these errors would go away. That's because Elmah is currently only logging to memory, and when the application restarts, the errors disappear. There are many ways to configure Elmah. You can configure it in a database, you can configure it to send emails, you can configure it to store it in XML files on your file system. Now, what you want to do is go to the Elmah website on code.google.com and find out what providers it has and choose the one that's appropriate for you. We'll just be using the in-memory one for now. The second problem is that even if you're not logged in, you can still see the error log. So if I go to like tag/1programming, right, see that I don't think I'm logged in. Nope, I'm not even logged in, but I can still see the error log. Isn't this a problem? Like, isn't this what we're trying to prevent?
Yeah, we don't want people to be able to see our error logs.
Exactly. But guess what? Since we tied in to ASP.NET or ASP.NET's role providers, we can actually just take this code that's actually already conveniently commented for us right here, and we can just activate it by dumping it right there. What this does is this says any person who accesses elmah.axt must be in the role admin.
That's genius.
Do you want to know an amazing thing?
Show me the magic.
No, actually, this is more of a depressing thing.
Oh.
Do you have any idea how many websites there are right now with Elmah installed that have absolutely no authorization?
A lot of them, because a lot of websites that blow up I see bring up the very error logs that we don't want people to see.
Yep, that happens as well all the time, and people don't secure their error logs, and it just becomes a mess. If you're using Elmah, you need to do this. Period. Sound good?
Sounds very good.
So now let's try to go to Elmah, now that I've added that in there. Check that out.
Kick to the front page.
Yep, or to the login page specifically.
Login page.
And if I log in, my awesome redirect will send me back to Elmah.
That's what we want to see.
Yep. So let's go ahead and deploy our changes and see if they worked on the live server. I'm going to right click, hit publish. Just check out my preview real fast. Publish. And unpublished. You know, how cool is that?
That is really cool. I can't believe the things I've learned in this that I see professional developers do wrong now that I look back. It's kind of staggering.
Yeah, sadly. Anyway, we now have a proper error message. And let's generate a couple more errors. Let's generate a 404 error. And now let's try to go to elmah.axt. We'll get kicked to the login page. We'll type in my credentials. We should see Elmah, and we get a 403 access is denied. That is Elmah. Actually, I forgot about this. They, by default, disallow remote access to it. It's actually a setting down here, right here.
So we just have to change that to true.
Yes. The reason they do this actually is specifically to force people to read the actual comments that they write so that they actually go to this page and hopefully learn about how to secure their error logs.
Which apparently doesn't always work.
No. Notice that this comment is repeated twice. And the comment is right above the thing that you have to set to true if you allow remote access.
Yep.
And people still get it wrong. Anyway, I'm going to set it to true. And I'm going to set it to true because I've properly made it so that I can only access it if I'm an admin. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to publish, and succeeded. Refresh, and I'll see Elmah in a second. And we see Elmah. And that's because we're logged in. But it's blank because all my errors disappeared into memory. Again, definitely go to Elmah, check out their providers, choose the ones that you want. There's everything from email to databases. So let's generate a couple errors. Let's generate a couple 404s. Let's come back to the error log and refresh and check this out.
Look at that.
Now, in this case, we are getting an actual error. This is fun. We're getting an error because ASP.NET MVC's default error handling is erroring out.
Say that again.
These errors aren't the errors that I want to see. These errors are saying that ASP.NET MVC's error handling is broken.
That's not happy. There's no happy there.
Yeah, let's fix that. So I'm going to fix that by going into App Start, Filter Config, and simply removing the error handling attribute from our filters. That's because we're now handling errors at a web server level and not an ASP.NET MVC level. So now I'm going to redeploy, publish. Okay. Now that I've removed that attribute, we should start to see actual errors. So let's generate a couple 404s and let's generate a couple real errors and let's see what Elmah has to say about it. So we get that, we go here, we get some errors, we come back to our error log, we refresh, and here we go.
Much better.
Yep.
So basically, once we got Elmah going, we just created a conflict.
Yeah, basically there was a conflict. There's quite a few conflicts. It was mainly the ASP.NET MVC's error handling just didn't know what to do with our error handling, which is at a web server level, not at an application level.
Gotcha.
Which is very nice, actually, especially if you mix things like PHP on a site. That way, errors, even through PHP, will still get redirected to these error pages.
Excellent. And we can access them remotely so long as we have admin login, and they're still secure.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
All right. Well, Elmah doesn't log PHP errors, but I mean the custom error pages, like if there was, because it's at the web server level.
Yep.
Anything plugged into the web server gets sent to these errors. And then the error logs are handled or are sent from ASP.NET MVC with a lot of details, including a stack trace, a bunch of information, your cookies, your refers, the path translation, the ports, the server name, and all that fun stuff.
Nelson, I don't understand why so many people don't do this right.
Me neither. But hopefully this video can change that.
You've made it so easy.
Well, it is so easy. I didn't make it so easy. The developers of Elmah made it so easy. The developers of IIS made it so easy. The developers of ASP.NET MVC made it so easy.
They're really smart guys. People should listen to them.
They should. Okay, I think that pretty much wraps everything up. I wanted to leave this till the end so that we could actually see an example of something breaking on a live site and getting a nice error, and then something breaking on a local site and getting a detailed error. Let's go ahead and do our last commit. But first, I'm going to actually remove the error out of my post controller. There we go. Let's do our last commit. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
How ready are you?
Is it really the last one?
Probably.
If it is, I'm very ready.
All right, I'm going to hit commit, and I'm going to say added error, or added custom error handling. I'm going to hit commit, and we have, well, let's just for fun, I'm going to republish it now that there's not an error on the homepage. Refresh, wait for the server to spool back up, and we will see the awesome blog that we just built in a year or two.
There it is. That is just sexy.
Alrighty.
Nelson, that was wonderful. I cannot believe how much stuff even my small artist brain learned. It's just staggering.
Yep, lots of fun stuff. I hope you guys learned a lot.
All right, guys, thanks for enjoying this class with us, and see you again on the next one.